The hard part is the day in, day out, every day, 8 days at a time, 10-hour days. You have to like to suffer.
You're listening to the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, the voice of Grand Canyon hiking. Presented by hiKin, hiking packs and gear built to help you hike your best hike. Here's your guide, Brian Special.
Well, it's been a week now since our interview with Grand Canyon Trails Supervisor Adam Gibson, and your takeaway seems to be about the same as mine. We don't know. And the thing is, it seems unlikely we will know anything on the future of North Kaibab and how long the opening date will be delayed until after Adam and his team get in there sometime in April. Now, May 15th is, of course, the traditional opening date of the North Rim, and even if that's ultimately not possible, this quote right here stands out and makes it clear there is an intent to get the trail open at some point this season.
Right now, it is possible for the North Kaibab to be open to users at a decent time frame this year. Maybe it's not May 15th. That might be a bit early, considering some of the construction we need to do. But it's a goal. It's not an entirely unachievable goal either. It's if we continue to have a very mild winter, and people understand that the conditions up there are going to be quite different. There are going to be additional risks. There's going to be a lot less services available up there. But kind of take more of a, backcountry user, wilderness frame of mind. It is possible for that type of user to be able to get up and navigate through the North Kaibab.
Yeah, still a daunting task ahead, so we'll just continue to hope for the best, but not expect it. Well, that interview was done in the Tapeats Narrows just below Havasupai Gardens as Adam's crew worked in the background. And looking back, it's hard to believe that the North Kaibab part of our conversation was more than an hour into it. Yeah, for the first hour, we talked about what it's like working on a trail crew in one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, in an environment both remote and hostile. Adam is 42 now, which, as you'll hear, is approaching old age for a trail worker, especially one who's been at it for decades already. Life on the Grand Canyon Trail Crew on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, powered by hiKin. Check out our canyon-tested front access packs at hikin.club. That's HIKIN.club. Okay, Adam, the first thing, I think you should be the one to kind of set the stage of where we are and what you guys are doing and what all the background noise is.
Sure, absolutely. So where we are is we're about 1.5 miles, 1 to 1.5 miles north of Havasupai Gardens in a section we call the Narrows here on the Bright Angel Trail. And we have a crew, an NPS crew with a support from a conservation corps from ACE, helping on. They are doing a construction project, what we call rehabilitation or reconstruction of the existing trail, but they are improving it, making it more passable and safer for hikers as well as for stock users.
Yeah, and this is just such a beautiful stretch of Bright Angel through the Tapeats sandstone here. You got the waterfalls. It's a great environment, I would guess, to work until the sun breaks through.
Yeah, the sun's going to hit here pretty soon, in about 30 minutes, and it's going to make their lives a little bit harder. It's going to be hotter, and they'll be seeking shade for their lunch break here around 12:30. They'll be happy to have that. The lunchtime is sacred with trail crew. Very important to refuel. Typically, when I'd have a 30-minute lunch break, I would spend all 30 minutes eating the entire time.
Oh, wow. You need those calories.
You need the calories. These guys will easily burn 5,000 calories in a day doing this kind of work. So they have to eat quite a bit to sustain that constant, steady work pace.
And the trail is open at the same time that all this work is being done. How many guys do you have on this project right now? How long has it been going on for? How long will it take? Because I think that really shows like how in depth and how much there is to these projects that you have.
Sure. So we have an NPS crew of 7 working on this, and they started as soon as we could. We were able to hire the very next week, right around Thanksgiving, when the government reopened. We had seasonals back on, we had our permanents already back in, and we were down here really the next week. So really, kind of the second week of December is when this project started, and we're planning to continue through the Narrows here, really up until and through May,
Oh,
not
wow.
not quite with this large of a crew. It will be shrunken down a little bit. But it's slow and time consuming and very arduous work. Everything we do is we work with raw natural materials. Everything we're seeing that's been constructed here has been gathered from the surrounding landscape, and that is at least half of the work of the job, is to safely gather material adjacent to the trail, near the trail, or in active drainages. We'll even set up high lines across canyons to move stone building material from places we've gotten approved to harvest stone, and we'll quarry it, move it to the location, and build with it. And the rocks in this section, we're seeing a lot of. It's essentially what it is a stone causeway with incorporated stone checks with a subbase of crush fill, and then they cover everything. Everything is covered in dirt, about 6 to 8 inches above the top of the stone checks. If you look at the size of some of these stone checks, they're moving these around. They're shaping them from the bedrock and from loose stones that are adjacent to the trail. And these things are weighing. Some of them are weighing as much as 400 pounds that they're moving into place. They're probably averaging more like 150 to 250 pounds. But one guy can move that. It's ideal to have two people help move it. But they're shaping it to where it's a nice, tight, precise fit, and it's locked in. From the outside stone parapet wall construction, and in this case here, they're actually keying straight into the bedrock here in the Narrows, and it's really strong. It also is a nice, even grade, which is particularly nice if you find yourself to be a mule rider here at Grand Canyon. It makes a big difference, a much smoother ride, and it's also nice for the hikers.
This kind of shows me I was on Hermit last week, and it's not as maintained as the corridor trails, obviously. And it was constructed over 100 years ago. And that section in the Coconino, where it's just the cobblestone essentially is what it looks like. And then I see what these guys are doing, and it's somewhat similar. And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's an art to this.
Oh yeah. This is a craft. This is something, if to get really good at particularly trail construction stonework, you really need about 6 to 7 years to kind of really get a strong mastery of it, right? And then you further hone it over the years. Like we were talking about Mark McLean, the crew leader working just up trail from us. He's been doing this roughly for about 20 years, and he has a real mastery of it. It might seem easy, but he's actually real efficient with where he strikes the stone. He knows exactly what it's going to do, depending on where he strikes and what type of hammer and chisel he uses. This is very much an art to this. That cobblestone that you're referring to on the Hermit Trail, we do quite a bit of that. We refer to it as riprap. Is a common term. It's a trail term, and it's notable because we're burying that rock to a full depth of 10 to 14 inches, and so you might only see the 3 or 4 or 5 inch wide face poking up, but that rock's going to be 10 to 12 inches deeper, sitting in there. And you lock it all in like that, and you encase it with stone construction, or you butt it up against existing bedrock, and you have a really solid trail, the strongest trail that we can construct here through these traditional methods here at Grand Canyon. And we do quite a bit of that. The South Kaibab is a place that has a pretty robust example of that style of construction.
How much pride is there in what you guys do?
Ideally, they take a lot of pride in it. There's a tremendous amount of pride in not just the work we do, but just in the lifestyle, the way of life it is to work and be on the trail crew. It's a commitment to the way of life. Your job doesn't really end, even when you tool up at the end of the day. You got to hike back. You're often there's always camp chores you got to do. The way we set it up is these guys are construction crews, and they rotate and they do cooking duties every night, rotating those duties. And so all that means is they hike back about an hour early, get cleaned up, and then they spend a couple hours cooking a really big meal for the rest of the crew. Yeah, it's a real way of life. You have to love it. You have to love to be outside and live outside. You have to love to develop strong, tight bonds with good friends. You do have wonderful camaraderie in this style, this way of life. But you also have to be okay with it, make your peace, and really even like it a little bit. You have to like to suffer. You're going to hurt. The hiking's kind of really the easiest thing that we do. That's the easy part. and we absolutely love to hike, of course. But it's the hard part is the day in, day out, every day, eight days at a time, 10-hour days, all year long, sustaining a pace, doing it for, ideally for a career, as a lot of our employees are. They're very much career bound. You have to be okay with being in some pain and accepting that and having an aching back. You're going to be stronger in the greatest shape you've probably ever going to be for the rest of your life, but it does come with some suffering.
Man, you're 42 now.
Yeah.
You said this is your second tour at Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And you were telling me that you went back to Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Yeah.
And did a lot of work there for, I think, 8 years before you were lured back to the canyon.
Yeah.
How different are different national parks in the environment and the trail work? Because I assume this offers, all the different layers of rock and sediment that you have to get through. I assume it's a lot different than, say, Great Smoky Mountain is.
Oh, it's very different. Yeah, you kind of couldn't get more dramatic in the differences. The canyon, you're right. The different layers. You stick around here long enough, 4 or 5 years. If you stick around here and do work year round, over the course of 4 or 5 years, you'll probably have worked in every geologic layer that we have here at Grand Canyon, for the most part, even working from the river. And so you come to learn these rocks, and you remember them, and like how they work when you shape them, how heavy they are. Some of these old ancient sandstones are just so surprisingly heavy. Some of the old limestones, like the Redwall limestone, is just tremendously heavy, dense, sharp material. You remember those types of details, and that's it's dramatically different. You find yourself, in the Grand Canyon, you're going to be very heavily focused towards doing a lot of stone construction. You're going to get a strong mastery of it. We do a lot of pretty complicated rigging operations, moving stone to, from one location to the next. We do a lot of fall protection, especially down here in the corridor. But then you find yourself in a place like Great Smokies, and you're kind of in a whole different set of skills. And there, it was a very much focused towards chainsaw rough carpentry. I did a ton of that. We actually did a lot of hazard tree work in a lot of the campsites and some of the front country settings there at the Smokies. But, we go out with chainsaws and some drills and, some hardware, and we'll go drop a black locust tree, as an example, out there, and then debark it, rotate it to where the crown is upwards, and then we would snap some chalk lines to match that crown, and then take a chainsaw, usually about 32 inches with the bar length, and then rip that whole foot log. I ripped one that was about 80 feet long once, and we ended up bucking it down to 60. But you can, it's just a whole different skill set. You do a lot of different types of copes, a lot of different type of chainsaw, rough carpentry. It's a good time. But then you also incorporate quite a bit of stonework there. If you go to some of those trails, you'll see it's a whole different type of stonework. They got some old granite. They got some very old gneiss, very hard, very ancient rock to work with, and you might find yourself harvesting it from digging into the mountainside. It's just it's a whole different set of skills, and the environment is really what sets what type of construction you're going to have to do at that location.
A lot of helicopter traffic, obviously. What's this one doing that's above us right now?
That one is the Stronghold Engineering Contractor helicopter. It looks like they're going in to move some pretty heavy slings. That looks to be a medium lift. So they're probably moving 3,000 to 4,000 pound sling loads, moving around from wherever they have their various construction crews, working along doing the Trans-Canyon Waterline construction.
Just so much going on.
There's a lot going on. There's so much going on in Grand Canyon right now.
And somehow you guys keep everything open for us, for the hikers, for the tourists. I assume that's important to the park, because it would be just as easy to shut some of this stuff down.
Oh, it's very important. It's important to all of us. That's where a lot of our pride goes towards. Is we want visitors to come to their parks. These are their lands. You own it. We all own this just as much as the next guy. We want them to come and enjoy these wonderful, outstanding resources. And Grand Canyon is just one of the best ways to experience it is to get down and hike along it and see its grandeur. See it from the rim, and get down and see it within it. And it's a whole different experience. And so it's very important to us, and that's actually a lot of the source of the pride we have in doing the work we do.
Well, I can speak for our community. We are very grateful for everything that you guys do. What's a day in the life like on a trail crew? Like, let's just start with today. You know, you're the supervisor. You hiked down from the rim, I believe, this morning. These guys didn't. So what's a day in the life like for everyone, for you and for everyone?
Quit losing your rhythm. Every time you stop and dig through your pack, that's just what happens. hiKin packs are designed to keep you moving with 6 front shoulder strap pockets that put your snacks, water, and essentials right where you need them. Our Rim to Rim pack and Canyon Elite are both Canyon tough and ready for any day hike on Earth. For your longer days, choose Canyon Elite. It's got a hip belt. Stay in rhythm and hike your best hike at hikin.club. That's HIKIN.club.
It's going to be a little different from one person to the next, but I can speak for this crew. You know, these guys were probably up at 5 a.m. They were definitely having some coffee, making up some breakfast.
And they're staying at Havasupai Gardens?
They're staying at Havasupai Gardens. That's where they're staying.
They have a bunkhouse?
We have a bunkhouse there. We're very, very happy with that. We usually keep it pretty full in the winter months when we're working down here. So they wake up around 5. They enjoy some coffee. They make a pretty significantly large lunch if they hadn't made it the night before. And they pack, typically 4 to 6 liters a day. Probably one is got some electrolytes in there. They just have some peace. They usually quietly read is probably the most common thing. There might be some light conversation. It just depends on the crew dynamics. You might go to another crew and it's a very lively morning crew and they love to just be super active in the morning. This crew, I can tell, is more of like, I'm going to chill and be quiet and read my book kind of a morning, And so they're going to do that. They're going to have a little time and then they're going to be up this crew's currently starting at 6:30 a.m. So they're outside at 6:30. They're doing some stretches. The crew leader typically is leading them in a safety discussion for the day. If they're not doing it at the safety circle, then they're coming to the job site after a stretch session and they're having a little safety meeting. And then as soon as that's done and everybody's input has been heard, they're breaking out the tools and they're going to work. And they're going to find themselves going to work for the rest of that 10-hour day. And typically they're just usually the plan's pretty simple. This is pretty straightforward. It's a matter of getting your material, getting your rock, and getting a stockpile of rock, and then moving your material into place and doing construction with it. And they'll do that up until today. They'll be off at 5, so they'll probably work until about 4:30, and then they'll be tooling up around 4:20, and then hiking back to the bunkhouse where they'll just decompress and rest for the afternoon. And so that's a pretty typical day.
What's the rest of the evening look like when they get back to the bunkhouse and they've got their free time?
Most of them are, they're going to spend some time getting cleaned up. Some of them might go and just take a little hike, enjoy some scenery. Myself, if I'm at Phantom Ranch or anywhere near there, I'm quite often fishing, fly fishing. I love to go and enjoy the water where I can. They might take a walk. They might go enjoy the sunset, but they're definitely, the most important thing is they're going to be having a really big dinner. And they typically sit down and have that dinner together. That's a real special time. And we've always maintained that tradition here at Grand Canyon to sit down and have a meal together. It's a real important part of the bond and the connections we have. And every crew really does it that way here at Grand Canyon. After that, they're probably, most of them are probably going to be just kind of chilling out, either in their tent or in their bunk or in the living room reading a book or maybe listening to some music or maybe playing a little bit of music if they hike down an instrument and if they play, that type of thing. And then myself in the canyon, I typically go to bed around 8 o'clock and then I'm asleep and I'm out like a rock until about 5 a.m. the next day.
And no internet, no Starlink, anything?
We don't have any of that yet. We've never had that.
I think that would change everything if you had that.
Yeah.
For the good or for the bad?
I've never been a tremendous fan of it because I like not having the close connection. Unfortunately, more and more of every aspects of federal employment and in most people's lives, you have to have some connection. So they're actually even going to be putting Starlink at the bunkhouses so that they can have connection to the internet and be able to. I think there's definitely some positives to that. People can more easily contact their friends. They can contact their families with that kind of access. But typically for us, it's been a landline phone call. And we even used to have to use phone cards to call out long distance.
Still doing long distance.
Yeah, we used to still do that. But that's been updated recently as well. But yeah, so with Starlink coming, that's going to come with a lot more connectivity, and that will change that dynamic a little bit. And I do see that coming this year. Is the compliance has already been processed, and I think it'll be getting installed probably sometime this spring or summer.
That sounds like a careful what you wish for, huh?
Yeah, careful what you wish for. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but also, if it improves some of the lifestyle down at for the members, for the employees, I'm all for it. I want the crew to feel like they're being taken care of and being heard. None of them have asked for this. This is an initiative that's been taken, really by management. Some of management decided it's important that we have access and computer access, especially to a lot of these data calls that have been coming kind of with short notice with our current administration. That's one of the things we've had to make adjustments for, and sometimes we have had to find ourselves hiking out a little early to go meet these data calls because we don't have access to a computer, but we can only do it through a computer. So that has a bit of an impact. So at least that's one of the bright sides, is having that connectivity and a computer at the bunkhouses and places like that. We'll be able to fulfill those deadlines without having to take us away from the important work that we're doing.
So it's not just Instagram and TikTok. You got a practical reason for this.
Oh yeah, that's probably the main reason for it, because there's just so much that you have to be able to do now through the computer system. We operated largely through paper, even up in just a couple of years ago. We did hard copies. We still come down here with hard copies and have safety meetings, and that's how we document it. And we'd scan it and load it that way. But it's getting to a point where now everything's just, they don't even want you printing it out. They want you to keep it in the computer and go as paperless as much as possible. And so with those kinds of requirements, you have to have that kind of connectivity.
How'd you get into this?
Yeah, ironically, I was a little bit lucky, you might say. My dad actually built trails when he was a young man in the Pisgah National Forest back in the late 70s and early 80s. So the Pisgah National Forest it connects to the Blue Ridge Parkway into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and it's in and around Asheville and Brevard, North Carolina. That's where I was born and raised, was Brevard, North Carolina. Lived in Waynesville for a long time as well. And so I was a bit fortunate to know that this kind of work existed. My dad took us hiking probably just about every weekend. Every Saturday we did a hike. We'd do some backpacking and camping. It was a part of my upbringing, was being outside, going fishing, going hiking, going just sightseeing, maybe seeing historic Civil War sites. And so I was lucky when I was 14, there was a pretty wealthy realty company called the Toxaway. It was Lake Toxaway Realty that had bought a lot of private land up in Lake Toxaway, North Carolina, and they had a lot of interest because they bought it from a lot of the locals. They had a lot of interest in wanting to bring in a lot of the local kids to kind of that were from that area to go in and help build a lot of trail systems within this large real plot of land where they were developing, some wealthy homes and stuff. And so part of that is getting that opportunity when I was about 14 and 15 and even 16, joining that little private conservation corps, you might say, where we focused on trail work, and we did all kinds of stuff. We built trails to housing plots and whatever else, and, develop mountainsides, mountaintops, build playgrounds, all kinds of cool things. So I was exposed to know that this kind of work existed, which I think a lot of folks don't really become familiar with it until they maybe leave college and they find that they're interested in outdoor type of work, and maybe they go and volunteer with the Conservation Corps. So, but having exposure to this type of work and kind of coming from roots where my dad had done this kind of work, I actually went in knowing this is what I wanted to do. And so I went in and studied forestry out of Haywood Community College there in Waynesville, North Carolina. And on my weekends, I'd volunteer with the Smokies, with the trail crew. I'd also volunteer with the Appalachian Trail with ATC, and just do whatever I could do. And I'd go and do it for free. I'd go bust my butt for free. And then, sure enough, you do that long enough, and you see someone employed that makes hiring decisions. In my case, Mr. Tobias Miller at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, he saw me. I worked with him. He's like, well, yeah, I'll give you a job. You want to get paid doing this? I'm like, sure enough. And so when I graduated from forestry, I had a job the very next Monday doing this kind of work, and I have not left it. I have not had a single season away since 2005 from doing this kind of work. Back-to-back seasons, usually working between Grand Canyon and Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Well, how'd you end up at the Grand Canyon? A boy from the South.
Yeah, 20 years ago, right? So internet, World Wide Web was, it was there, but it wasn't as predominant as it is today, right? So I remember I would make monthly trips to the local library where I could get to internet access, right? And so I had better internet access there than I even did at my community college. And so I'd go there and I'd make a point to look for jobs once a month. And I believe for that first job I applied to at the Smokies, I believe I filled it out in pen and faxed it in. I think that's how I did it. It was done in paper and faxed in is how I submitted that. But that's how I got into it. And fortunately there too at Haywood, it has such a good forestry program. Some of the local parks and national forests would send representatives to recruit from the School of Forestry and Wildlife. And so they were always able to get at least a couple of employees, if nothing permanent, but at least something seasonal from time to time. And that definitely had my attention, and I went into it loving it and have loved the lifestyle ever since.
So you were looking to get out. You were looking to go explore somewhere else, and that's how the Grand Canyon came up?
Yeah. I checked. Jobs were here, and I was actually aiming to get to more towards Montana and the Pacific Northwest. Which made a lot of sense, right? I studied forestry, I worked around trees, had tree work experience, but this place was hiring, and I needed a job, and so sure enough, I came here as a WG3 laborer. I was making about $12 an hour that was late 2005, and I ended up sticking around. I had the intention to go back to the Smokies and start bouncing to other parks. I was definitely interested in getting up to Olympic and other places in the Northwest. But I fell in love with this place. I just absolutely loved, growing up in Southern Appalachia. Your sky is beautiful, but you don't have such big, huge, expansive views like you do. And really, you don't have anywhere like you have them in the Southwest. And I just fell in love with it. I love being able to go, and from the North Rim, I could look across 90 miles, in most directions, and just see this incredible landscape of red rock. And the San Francisco peaks. I could see the canyon itself and all that beautiful ponderosa pine and pinyon juniper forest. And then on top of all that, the sky was just so unbelievable that sometimes it would win the day, right? Because it was just that pretty. And just that kind of landscape, it just inspired me, and I felt like I had to stick around, so I did stick around.
Had you ever been to the southwest of the canyon before you got a job here? Was that the first time you'd seen it?
I'd never left the South when I got a job here, so I had bought a little $1,500 1991 Chevy Sonoma, and I barely owned enough in my little apartment I was living in to fill the bed. I couldn't even fill the bed. If I didn't have a bike, it wouldn't have been filled. Came out with a couple pillows and a blanket and some sleeping bags, and a bicycle. And came out here from scratch and lived in the labor cabins there on the South Rim for about a year, which is not very luxurious living by any stretch. But didn't matter. I was in the canyon, working a lot here in the canyon. I was all over. I was fortunate in that I was working out of Phantom Ranch on my second season. I was fortunate to get on the river pretty quick. Getting that river experience absolutely hooks you. If you like that type of lifestyle, and being able to access those trails and do it's even more primitive trail work than it's just a very minimal use of tools and very raw material that you use there. You don't really even quarry it. Very minimal shaping. Really enjoyed those really isolated regions. Really enjoyed just the whole river lifestyle and experience. And so that definitely helped hook me. But I would say more than anything it was the inspiration of the canyon and this surrounding landscape that hooked me more than anything. That, and then working with fine gentlemen like Mr. Mark McLean, the crew leader here. Yeah, I've known him for 20 years and worked with him off and on over all the years, and you just develop such a tight friendship, and some of the things and adventures you go through, working in this location and then going out and recreating and hiking and enjoying the resource on your days off, and some of the adventures you get into in those situations are just very memorable and experiences that you just want to kind of keep having.
I love how you guys call it the resource. The resource.
Yeah, the resource.
So what was it when you laid eyes on the canyon for the first time, or when you got to this region? I mean, so different than the South, obviously.
Yeah,
I lived in the South for a while too. I mean, it's a night and day.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were thinking, like the first time you laid eyes on the canyon?
Well, I was stunned. The first time I seen it was I actually went out to Mather Point to where Mather Point is today, and it was a different place at that time, but the view remained the same. And I was actually very much taken aback. It was hard for me to comprehend. I had never seen anything quite like that. To be honest, when I first looked at it, I got a little dizzy. It was just to understand what it was I was looking at was pretty hard to comprehend. And then you sit there for a few hours and you really just watch the changing light, and you watch the clouds move past the canyon, and you start to really get an understanding of what you're looking at. And then you start devoting some time in here and living and working in it. It's, the scale of it you start to kind of comprehend the scale of this place and just how massive it is. And it was quite shocking though. The first time I saw it, I remember it because I make a point now to when I encounter employees or if I have friends or family that come out here, I try to go and share that experience with them sometimes when I can, let them see it for the first time. If I can be there, I'd like to see it because everyone has a little bit of a different reaction. But one thing that it seems to be consistent that I see is everyone is just really amazed. They're very much taken aback at just how incredible this place is and what they're seeing.
I mean, I see all the time where somebody will say something online about, hey, I've lived in Arizona my whole life and I've never been to the Grand Canyon. Is that the most mind-blowing thing you've ever heard? I mean, it's so hard to believe. So what is your favorite reaction that you have seen from someone when they've laid eyes on the canyon for the first time?
My favorite reaction, I would say, is the individual that's taken aback. But I would say my most memorable one was a colleague I had out here that came out here and worked on the detail from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His name was Eric Bonert, just a real talented trail worker. But his reaction, I really liked it. It was right there at the Bright Angel Trailhead, and he was helping us do some snow operations. So we were clearing around Kolb's studio, and I was like, "Oh, take a look at that, Eric." And he tried to just play it like it was so nonchalant, like it wasn't such a big deal at all. But even he was just absolutely taken aback. I think that was probably my single favorite memory of seeing someone see it for the first time. Yeah, that was a good one. Just trying to play it off like that's not such a big deal, but absolutely not doing very well.
There is such a joy in that, and that's got to feel so good for you. I mean, to see people, even when you're coming down to work and seeing people hiking on these trails that you've worked so hard to, maintain. I'm curious if you look back at the history of these trails at all.
Sure.
And especially like North Kaibab and, seeing how they built these trails.
Yeah.
Is it kind of mind-blowing to you as someone who knows something about this stuff?
So much of the Grand Canyon advice you'll find online is loud, confusing, and just flat out wrong. That's why Hike Club Grand Canyon exists on Facebook. It's a judgment-free hiking community where hikers help hikers, and where you can have direct access to Brian, Coach Arnie, and guests from this show. If you want real answers so you can hike the canyon with confidence, this is where you belong. Search for Hike Club Grand Canyon on Facebook and join our conversation today.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. You kind of can't help. I think it's very similar to kind of lifestyle of the mountain man, right? The folks that would go and set up and live in the Rockies and just make their living trapping. You had to be just an incredibly rugged, tough, hard-living individual, hard-working individual. And some of the construction work, some of the old historic construction work, which you can see all over the place. Some of these old walls, some of them are very old. It's just impressive. The South Kaibab, the fact that they built that like in a year,
right,
is just amazing to me. And they did it with a heavy winter, and they were just setting up these camps, and they were just going for it. They were just laying rock. The rock they found and where they put it, that's where it went. As soon as they laid it, that's where it lived, and they built just a tremendous amount of structure to cut a trail through that on that ridge. That is the South Kaibab. That one's sometimes the most impressive to me. The North Kaibab is amazing. There's old, the old rust path. It's just it's a complex history, and it's an incredible history, and it takes a real rugged individual that just loves to be in that kind of place to live in the canyon, and to love to work with their hands and to work with raw material. It makes sense that a lot of those guys that were miners at first, and then they realize there's a lot more value here than just coming in here and experience this place. Yeah.
Yeah. How long? You said it took a year to build South Kaibab, which is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now in management at NPS and the Grand Canyon, and all the regulations it takes to do everything, and permitting and safety. How long would it take to build South Kaibab from scratch today?
Well, if we were just cutting in a trail, and just building the retaining wall and not really focused on anything else, and just making the trail with the drainage, it's hard to say. The safety requirements and all the compliance requirements. I mean, there's just no way that we could do it today in a year. It's just not going to happen. I think it would take more like 5 years for us to be able to do it. With a comparable workforce. And they had a pretty large workforce. And I think, to the extent that we build today, we definitely build to a higher standard. It's a bit more precise. There's quite a bit more precision in what we're doing. But to slap it together quickly, I still think it would take us more like 4 to 5 years to do it.
And that's after all the permitting and everything, right?
Permitting, the safety. A big thing for us is you gotta. It's really just a whole different way of looking at it, right? Like we put a lot more value today in protection of life. Back then I think it was a bit more acceptable. At least where I'm from in Appalachia, there wasn't as much value in protection of life, especially in the construction setting, as there is today. And that's a good thing. That's a good improvement. One trail that strikes me as an example that kind of that really shows that way of thinking is the Colorado River Trail. When they built that trail, when the Seas were building that trail, they expected someone to die on that trail. Their plan was to name that trail after the first construction worker that died in the construction of it. And they were very fortunate that no one did die. And a very dangerous trail. Those who have hiked along it, they had to do quite a lot of blasting through that base layer to build that trail. So it would have been very hazardous. They really weren't working in a ton of fall protection. They would use some, but I feel like they probably used ropes more to protect their tools to keep them from falling in the canyon than themselves. So it was just a different way of life back then and way to do things. And now we put a lot more effort into making sure that we're doing it as safely as we can, and that's really important, I think. It's important from my point of view to actually keep people coming back, and I think we've been very successful in that we do have people return here season after season and year after year. And I've been, ever since I've been back in the last 6 years, that's been pretty consistent. And so just having that kind of old school, hard charging mentality, who cares about safety? I definitely experienced quite a bit of that in the trail, my trail construction experience. Haven't done over 20 years, and I think the way we approach it now is the most effective. We're able to get a lot of good work done, but we're also able to get people back up to their lives, and back to their family members, safe and sound, and not broken.
That would seem to be pretty important. I don't know.
That's pretty important. It's important to me. There was always that hard charging kind of mentality, even just like 10 or 15 years ago. I remember seeing it a lot more. And people, there's not many trail workers that I've known, and I've known a lot over the years, that have made it 30 years. I just met one gentleman from Yosemite. He made it 37 years doing trail work from Yosemite, and he retired. He made it the longest that I'm aware of. I think about some other old folks, Mr. Bill Dabney, an old packer. He worked here at Grand Canyon and at Big Bend National Park. He was a mentor of mine early on. I was impressed by how he was able to stay in the field so much and retire and be able to leave it after about 34 or 35 years of doing it. But there's not many. I've got some old friends from back in the Smokies. They've made it to 25, 27, 28 years and just not quite able to get to that 30 year. And most of the time is due to some kind of either long-term chronic injury, reoccurring problem, or worse, a single event that led to their sudden retirement.
Yeah, I'm just watching these guys as you're talking here, just swinging these heavy hammers and
Yeah.
sledgehammers and chiseling, and I mean, it's just hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, very much. You gotta love it. You gotta love to work hard to do it. But that's if there's anything that they take away from me, I hope that they learn that you got to sustain a pace that just not only gets you through the hour, but it gets you through the day, gets you through the week, gets you through the season, gets you through the year, and gets you through your career. Right? And if you go as hard as you can, which I used to go as hard as I could, as fast as I could, all the time. And it really took a significant injury back in 2014 for me to learn. I herniated some discs in my back and was just really, or I don't know if they were herniated. They were slip discs. It was one of those two. I can't remember the terminologies. But what I do remember is that it hurt really, really badly, and I was laid out for about 4 months and had all kinds of complications. And I tried to work through it for about 6 weeks, I remember. And I was just in so much pain every day, doing trail work, carrying logs, moving rocks, trying to suffer through it. And it wasn't until a doctor set me aside and just kind of had a real heart-to-heart with me. He's like, if you do not stop doing what you're doing and let yourself recover, you will be disabled. You are not going to be able to function in the basics of life. And so I think that kind of an injury, unfortunately for me, in my stubborn way, is what it took for me to realize, hey, you can't go that way all the time. You have to, I was only 9 years into the work at that point. And so I learned after that, it took me that. And I've tried to share that experience with folks on the crew today and with other folks and colleagues, in other national parks that, sustain yourself. Make sure that you can do this work in 15, 20 years. Really make sure you're wearing more protective hearing protection than you might need. That way you can hear your grandkids, when you're an older man. These types of things are going to be real important to you. And if you don't put the work in and the precautions now, you're going to feel the effects of them sooner than you think.
Seems like you've learned how to become quite a leader through your experiences.
I'd like to think so. I know I try. I'm probably my own worst critic. But I know I care a lot for this place, and I care a lot for the people that do this kind of work. And so my biggest priority is balancing, getting this work done and getting it done to a good standard, but also striking that balance and making sure that we're doing it safely and maintaining the risk to the extent that we can, to mitigate the risk as well as we can. So we are ensuring that we get these employees home at the end of the week.
Adam Gibson, trail supervisor for Grand Canyon National Park. It is very clear the safety of his team is his highest priority. Another reason why I think that we as the hiking community need to be understanding of whatever park management decides when it comes to the reopening of North Kaibab. It's Adam and his crew who will be doing the difficult and dangerous work. And I'm sure you will agree that they should be afforded every opportunity to do it safely. And if that means delays, so be it. Well, just down from the Tapeats Narrows on Bright Angel is the notorious Devil's Corkscrew. When you're ascending from the river, the Corkscrew is the first serious ascent, about 600 vertical feet over a mile or so. Just the name is enough to create a level of fear in first-timers, and Coach Arnie knows that firsthand. Here's Coach on how he learned to dance with the devil.
First of all, action cures fear. Some of you may have heard of that before, but it's true. If you have action, if you do something, you will eventually overcome the fear. If you face and step into your fear through that action, you will start the process of overcoming fear. If you have a lot of preparation, if you prepare, if you train, if you plan, if you prepare the right way, that will help you to overcome your fear. And then lastly, repetition will overwhelm your fear. I have a coach or a good friend who's a coach, and he likes to use the word space repetition because as an athletic coach, that's what we use, space repetition, over and over and over. That's what practice is all about. And guess what? It works because the more automatic something becomes, the less fearful you become because all you're focusing on is doing what you're trained to do. There's no worry, there's no thought about fear. So here's my little canyon anecdotal story that happened many years ago, because on my first 2 adventures in the canyon, we came up through on Bright Angel, and guess what? I never saw it because we went down in the dark the first time, second time on South Kaibab. Both times came up on Bright Angel in the dark. So I thought, man, I don't even know this trail. Never seen it before. So one Saturday, I got there very, very early before sunrise, and I started down Bright Angel and literally went up and down Bright Angel for about 12 hours. And one of my key goals that day was to go up and down Devil's Corkscrew because it was so scary, right? And I made that thing so small, it was crazy. It was less than a mile, about maybe 650 feet of climbing. It was a joke. Before I was done, I went up and down that thing 4 times. And I just went through every little piece of Bright Angel that I thought was a challenge. Jacob's Ladder, all the little pieces, how far they were, how many vertical feet they were. After 12 hours, even my wife thought I was crazy because she didn't know where the heck I was. And I was there all freaking day on that one trail, Bright Angel, until guess what? I own Bright Angel. It means nothing. It's just a trail with little segments that I made into little tiny pieces. And there it is. That's overcoming fear. And it takes time. It takes repetitions. It takes action. You can do it too. It just depends on how you want to do it. But don't let things overwhelm you that you don't really understand. Ask questions and then experience it and then break it down. I promise you it'll make a difference. As usual, if you need anything, give me a holler. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.
Coach Arnie Fonseca Jr., our exercise physiologist and canyon coach. If you have any questions for Coach or need help overcoming any fears that you might have yourself, you can reach out to him anytime. His contact information is in the show notes. Hey, I do have a favor to ask. If you enjoy the show, would you please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening? It truly helps us get in front of those who need us and helps ensure that we'll keep at this for a long time to come. So please leave us a review. It just takes a minute, and we would be so, so grateful. All right, that is it for now. My name is Brian Special, encouraging you, as always, to go hike the canyon. You can do it. Take that first step. Embrace the journey. And when you get there, whether it's for time goals or taking your time, just hike your own hike and savor every step in the magnificent Grand Canyon. We'll see you next time on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, powered by hiKin. Support the brand that supports this show at hikin.club. That's HIKIN.club.